All right, guys. So, welcome to, Coach Williams' online class. All right, I know we're all in a weird situation right now, okay? And I honestly don't know how many of you are going to watch this. However, I highly encourage you to do this unless if you can just look at the notes and completely understand. But this is my attempt to elaborate on the material, explain it a little more in depth so that hopefully you have a good, thorough knowledge of what you're being taught, okay? So remember, your study guide for the final, it is on the website, all right? And it's split into two halves. The first half is stuff that we have already covered, all right? The second half, there are things that have not yet been mentioned, all right, such as what we're starting with today in the Industrial Revolution. So as we do this, my advice, and I sent it out in the remind message, is go through, take out all the questions pertaining to the Industrial Revolution. And I can put a link for, all right, questions 1 through 17 are this topic, 18 through 25 are this one, if y'all need to. But go through, and after hearing the lecture, try to answer those questions, all right? And of course, either respond on the YouTube channel or through the remind, or even email towards me, but let me know any comments, questions, or concerns you have. All right, I'll do a follow-up video answering those after a couple days. All right, and then hopefully shortly after that, we'll pick up with the next one, which I got to double check, but I think it's about nationalism and stuff like that around the world. It's actually pretty cool. Kind of some of those changes that build up off the reign of Napoleon, and nationalism is a cool concept. It helps lead to World War I. But before that, all right, we need to talk about the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so we told you before you left, the Industrial Revolution that started in the late 1700s. Okay, and it's going to carry all the way to the beginning of World War I. Now, there's actually two waves of the Industrial Revolution, okay? The Industrial Revolution as a whole, though, it's all about changing economics, okay? We're now moving from more skilled artisan workers, handmade devices, to machine-made factories, assembly lines, all right? Mechanisms, interchangeable parts, gears, all right? Shafts, all those things that now build everything we're having, right? The phone you're on right now or computer you're watching this is a product of the Industrial Revolution. The table you're sitting at, okay? Unless if your dad or uncle, someone is real good at making stuff by hand, probably made using machines, okay? Or at least part of it, all right? The lights that are above your head, thank you for the Industrial Revolution, okay? So it has impacted every single aspect of our daily lives, okay? Even in this quarantine that we're in right now, you could not go a whole day without coming across something that is the result of the Industrial Revolution. All right. So the history behind it, the first wave, all right, 1780s, like we mentioned, all the way through the mid 1800s, about the 1840s. All right, is the first wave. All right, now that first wave, and I'm about to ask you a question like normally in class, which you can't answer. But if you could guess where it started, okay, I'd hope that you would have said Great Britain. Okay, I feel like Steve from Blue's Clues trying to give you the pause time in between. It's weird, but I'm going to keep doing it. All right, so it starts in Great Britain. The British are the first to invest in this, okay? And we mentioned all it is about using machines to create goods in large quantities, okay? Because as much as we like to be proud of ourselves, a machine a lot of times can build more of what we use, all right, at a faster rate, okay? And that is why it is more cost effective to invest in an expensive machine for the hope of doing that, all right? Now, there are a couple of things that highlight the first wave, okay? One of those, and we've talked about this term before, textiles, okay? Now, take a second, try to remember what a textile is. It has nothing to do with the flooring, all right, the tiles that your parents might have laid down in the bathroom, whatever. It doesn't have anything to do with this thing that you're probably doing right now instead of actually listening. Instead, a textile is a woven fabric, okay? A cloth that has been woven, usually to make clothes, okay? So you had different devices, mechanical ones, which we'll mention in a minute, that would have been used to create the textiles, okay? Instead of just sewing it by hand, it was made through machine, okay? The most famous of those to have done that, or at least the first one, and you need to, when I mention these inventions, please make a note as to which ones are which. These are the important ones that summarize the Industrial Revolution. First one is the spinning jenny, okay? And if you're following along with the PowerPoint that I posted online, you'll see pictures of it. I think it's actually a GIF meant to show how it works. With a spinning jenny invented by James Hargrave, okay? Now, it used a wheel to pull the thread through, okay? And then you move it back and forth, and it would sew it for you, all right? So as much work as it took to make the spinning jenny, once it was made, you can now wove your clothing a whole lot quicker than if someone stitched it by hand. All right, and that's awesome because as we got more cotton, you got a little more comfortable clothing, all right? Instead of stuff that probably felt like burlap that'd be really rough on your skin. Okay, Well, once you get textiles, you start to develop factories with the intent of making these textiles. Okay, so the first factories were predominantly textile ones during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, if you go through American history, you hear a lot about the textile industry in the North. Okay, especially in regards to the Civil War, and not just the textile industry, others, but that was one of the ones that gave them an economic advantage. Okay, another thing though that helped make these textiles, okay, profitable is you need the cotton to make the clothes. All right, I mean we're not fancy and getting silk for everything. Okay, that's too expensive. And cotton for a while was too expensive. Okay, you'd have to pick it by hand, and then you get all the little stickers that are stuck in there, and it takes forever to filter it out. Well, then our boy Eli Whitney comes along. Okay, now his intentions were not horrible when he made this. Okay, he did not know what it was going to lead to. But he thought, okay, I've got an easier way to pull the cotton out of the actual plant and separate it from the stickers. Okay, and that's very simple. All right, but very cool. So you get like a little sheet, okay, kind of like a screen door, and you place the cotton against it. Okay, you shove it in there. Well, you've got a wheel that's got hooks on it that would grab the little bit of cotton sticking through there and pull it away through, all the way through. Well, the threads were so big that the cotton could fit, but not the stickers, so they'd fall down at the bottom, and now you've got clean cotton, easy to turn into clothing. Now, sadly, because of this, it is going to help lead to the increase in slavery in the American states. And we know the horrors behind that, okay, plantations growing and becoming more profitable. Which is a shame. Maybe had we not had the cotton gin, things could have turned different as far as slavery goes. Sadly, I think somebody else would have come along with an idea like that. But so that was a big, important device in helping, though, make the textiles profitable and therefore the development of factories. Okay. The next thing I want to talk to you about is steam-powered devices. There was no electricity yet. Okay, even though Ben Franklin got shocked by the lightning through the kite. We talked about the truth behind that story already. He wasn't actually struck by lightning, just found out you could conduct it. You still didn't have electricity that could go through and power homes and power devices. Steam was the best way. Okay. Now, if you've ever had a kettle, you know exactly how that works. All right. You get water, you heat it up, and you give it a very narrow place for it to escape, and eventually comes up with some pressure. Well, people figured out that you could take that pressure and use it to power stuff as long as you had enough water, enough steam to heat it, okay? So the steam-powered device made transportation much quicker, all right? Now, to heat up that water, you need coal, okay? Because the coal is going to burn, make a fire, causing it to turn to steam, okay? So along with the steam-powered device, you get an increase in coal production, okay? You had coal. It's a natural product found in parts of the earth. Thank you, dinosaurs, for that. But coal started to be harvested from mines, all right, to go along to help power these steam-powered devices. Now, one of the most interesting and probably important things that comes about from that makes the whole Industrial Revolution possible is something called an interchangeable parts. Okay, interchangeable parts is really cool. So basically, if you made something, okay, let's say you want to make let's say you want to make a car. All right, simple, easy thing. Okay, and you designed every single piece for that car. All right, handmade it, handcrafted. Okay, and then boom, you made that car. Awesome. Now you want to go make another one. Well, that car is going to be a little different. Okay, just human error. So what we just realized with the interchangeable part is why don't you make, instead of 100 cars one at a time, make 100 of each single piece. 100 steering wheels, 100 windshields, 100 gear shifts, 100 all the components to make the engine. Okay, 400 doors. All right, so you have 4 on each car. Okay, make all those parts and make them the exact same. So let's say you make 100 pieces for every single car, but you assemble 70 of them and then you sell those 70. Well, and then someone's car breaks down. Instead of having to make a brand new tire, you had the exact tire that fits in that, or you had the exact piece that the engine needs to get it going again because it broke off. Whatever it is. Okay, the interchangeable part, all right, made it where you can produce, it's a lot easier to produce the individual pieces quickly, all right, especially using factories, than it is to recreate the entire item itself. Okay, look, best example that you guys come across, all right, your phones. I'm sure a ton of you have had your phone or your friend's phone, the screen is cracked or broken, okay? Now, yes, you can get a new phone, but the other thing you guys can do is you can go get a screen replacer, okay? Go replace the screen. Now, yeah, it costs some money, but that screen is a whole lot cheaper than what an actual cell phone is. All right, so that's a big part of it. Or Screws, okay? Screws to assemble the things, make all the screws the same, or at least make a couple different kinds of screws and make lots of them. All right, so that you always got to, I'm sure your dad or someone's got a old medicine jar or something full of a bunch of different screws that they've saved up over the years. So when something falls apart, they can always just put that back on there, okay? So the interchangeable part is a game changer here. All right, now the story behind it's really cool, okay? So it brings us back to Eli Whitney. Eli Whitney, all right, had developed the interchangeable part and brought it up to Congress. Okay, it's about the time of the Civil War, and he proposes to them and says, "Look, I instead of selling you a gun, okay, I'm going to sell you the pieces to your guns." And he brings 3 rifles into Congress. Now that would not fly today. Okay, all right, different times. So he brings these 3 rifles into Congress, and he takes the rifle apart, leaves all the different pieces scattered together. Okay, all the barrels, all the triggers, all the to be honest, I don't know all the pieces, but all the things that you used to make the gun, okay, all the hammers, all right, laid it all out there on the table, mixed it up together, so you had no idea which piece went to which gun. And now they had them all completely separated. He goes and reassembles and makes 3 new guns. Now maybe you've got the barrel from gun number 1 with the trigger from gun number 2, the hammer from gun number 3, all right, and you've got the flint from gun number 3 as well, and then you've got all these different pieces, and all 3 work the exact same. That's the beauty of the interchangeable part. So now soldiers at battle who, oh, part of my gun broke off, instead of just throwing it down and now you're out of gun, which we didn't have a ton of weapons and stuff at the time, especially in certain areas. So that allowed them to then just get a new piece and put it on there. All right, so that's the beauty of the interchangeable part. Okay, so that is the Industrial Revolution. Now I skipped this one I mentioned with the steam-powered devices. Okay, also made transportation a lot quicker across the oceans with the steamboat. Okay, and I say that I should get back to that center. But because of this first wave of the Industrial Revolution, Western Europe is going to prosper. Okay, so it starts in Great Britain eventually. So people in the Netherlands and France, okay, kind of moves that direction a little. But those areas now are able to produce more. There's more income coming in because people are buying and selling these, especially from other parts of the world or the continent that want to buy them, okay? So money is flowing in there, okay? So those parts of Europe, the western side, is going to prosper. Doesn't mean that others suffered, all right? But Western Europe is really going to thrive as a result of it, okay? So the spread, okay? I mentioned it goes from Great Britain and spreads east. Now, these factories, the British government tried their best to keep it all secret. All right, try not to let anyone know how our factory worked, how our machines operated, how we built this, how we did that. But eventually you'd have, and it even came down to some spies and things like that, but people would eventually go to other countries and they would sell the information on how the factory worked. Okay, so it took some time for the Industrial Revolution to spread. If you're looking at the map provided by you, it's not until the 1850s that it reaches the Netherlands. Okay, then another decade before it goes through most of France, part of Spain. Okay, it doesn't reach the German areas until about 30 years after the Industrial Revolution begins. Okay, it takes a couple of decades. It is a slow spread. Now, just because it's spreading through Europe doesn't mean that they're the only ones benefiting from it or affected by it, okay? The impact of the Industrial Revolution could be very clearly be felt in Asia and the Americas. The main reason why? Colonies, okay? The American colonies, okay? Even though the United States had became free, Canada was still a colony. There's all the ones down in Latin America that we have just brought up with Spain and Portugal, okay? And then the colonies out in Asia, all right? French Indochina, which is now Vietnam by France. Okay, England started building up some colonies in India, which we'll talk about more in depth. All right, so the impact of the Industrial Revolution started affecting these areas because now the things that we can make in the factories, the resources come from those colonies. So we started taking the resources from there, bringing them back to Europe. So we gave them more, or not gave them, but we came up with more reasons to make them work for specific things. Okay, we started harvesting and focusing on that in the colonies because most of the European nations did not have enough of those resources available. All right, but because it's going to spread, it's also going to allow the rest of the world to interact like it never done before. Okay, you've got more back and forth between the Europeans and the South Americans. All right, between maybe the Canadian colonists. All right, with some people from India. Okay. Which is ironic because right now it is because of this global interaction that this thing has spread so severely and while we're all at home. But it changed the way that people did business, political, all that, whatever, around the globe, okay? Because you start getting international contact for resources or to sell goods, all right, or to find out the secrets of the factory, okay? Now, I told you we're going to talk about the steamboat, okay? So the steamboat helps with the spread, okay? Because the steamboat's going to start going to these other parts of the world, and then they're going to start seeing how the ship got there, okay? Now, before we talked about the caravel, and there were some other ships after that. Wooden relied on the wind or the currents of the ocean to propel them. It'd take about a couple of weeks, okay, to get across the Atlantic. Steamboat moves a whole lot quicker, okay? A lot faster, and it could be a larger ship, which meant it could carry more cargo to ship back and forth, okay? So instead of weeks, now you're a couple of days for this journey from the Americas to Europe, okay? And does anyone know probably the most famous of all these steamboats out there? Titanic, okay? Y'all are too young to know, but that was movie based on that famous event. All right, about 2 years before World War One started, I remember back when I was a kid, that was one of those double VHS movies. Okay, pretty cool. Lord of the Rings was another, but y'all now have it on digital or DVD, so you don't have to do that. But the steamboat, okay, helped play a role in the spread, okay. But then the other device that helps spread it, probably even more important than the steamboat, is the railroad. All right, so trains, okay, that starts to develop because of the Industrial Revolution. All right, you've got the Bessemer process, which we'll talk about a little more in depth in a few minutes. Made it where you could build more or lay more track, all right, for the train to travel. You couldn't just go off road with the train. Okay, it's got to be on the track, so you got to lay the track down. All right, but because we've got a way to make more steel, we're able to do that. And so now you could reach all across your country, all right, or even if you're in Europe or Africa, to other countries throughout the continent. You're able to travel like you had never done before at a quicker rate. Okay, when we talked about why we tried to buy New Orleans and then Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon, because the Mississippi River, was a whole lot quicker than going 80 miles on land. Well, now with the train, if you got track connecting Ohio to New York, you don't have to rely on the river. You can ship your stuff by train a whole lot quicker. All right, and you're going to see radical changes as a result of the Industrial Revolution. All right, and another way that it impacted this outside of economics, military mobilization. All right, we talked about Napoleon running out of supplies on his invasion of Russia, and they all had to walk there, okay? Well, there's track connecting France to Russia. Then maybe next time you invade, and Hitler actually comes across this issue with his blitzkrieg in World War II, all right, then maybe you put all your supplies on the train and send it that way so your soldiers can move quickly. Or if you need reinforcements, they can be transported across the train as well, okay? So the railroad, once again, I know you use this term already, but it really is a game changer, okay? You can ship goods faster and further than you ever had before because of this. So that's the first wave of the Industrial Revolution. That's a lot, okay? It's been about 17 minutes packing that in there, okay? And I get if you want to take a break, pause, gather some for a minute, and then we'll come back to it. That's fine. The video is going to go long, but it's kind of broken up. Whether you're either restarting now or you want to power through, we're going to talk about the second wave of the Industrial Revolution, all right? So from 1870 till 1914. So you get about kind of a lull for about 30 or so years. As far as new innovations, okay, it's still slowly spreading across the continent, but then you get this new wave kicks in. All right, now instead of steam-powered devices and textiles, okay, this is going to be more highlighted by steel, chemicals, electricity, and petroleum, okay, or oil. All right, now 3 inventions that I want you guys to remember from the second wave of the Industrial Revolution. All right, the light bulb, which we should all be familiar with, okay, is currently working right above my head. All right, and on these screens that we're using, Thomas Edison. Okay, Thomas Edison is the inventor of the light bulb, or at least the first person to patent it. Interesting story there with him with that. Then with the telephone, okay, which believe it or not, there actually used to be a device only for calling people, not just texting or researching things online or Snapchatting weird photos. Okay, and we can thank Mr. Alexander Graham Bell for that. Y'all probably don't remember Bell South or any other Bell-related phone companies, but it stems from him. Now, the third one, and I think it's probably a little more important than those other two, and y'all might not be as familiar with, some of you are, the assembly line, okay? And we can thank Mr. Henry Ford for that, okay? The father of the Ford Motors, all that. So the assembly line, okay, instead of making something and carrying it over to the next station or making it all in one spot, piece by piece, this ties into the interchangeable part. You can now assemble your goods, okay, your products, okay, and then have it go on down the assembly line to the next person, all right? So every day, instead of trying to make 20 cars, you're making, 800 tires, okay, for each of the cars or whatever the number is going to be, all right? So you're making dozens and dozens and dozens of your individual thing. Well, when you focus on that one individual thing, You get better at it, you get a little quicker, and it goes on to the next stage, okay? The example on your notes is people making bottles, okay? So one person, their job is to stick the label on. Every time a bottle gets to them, stick the label. Another person's got to fill the bottle, okay? Then someone's got to screw the cap on. Someone's got to seal it tight. Everyone's got a different role to make with the assembly line. Now, the most famous or first impact from the assembly line, the good old car, all right? The Model T, Model A. All right, we get that built at an affordable rate because of the assembly line, and people are now able to drive, all right, from town to town instead of worrying about horseback or riding or having to rely on the limitations of the train. Okay, and speaking of the train, okay, so let's highlight the Bessemer process. Okay, this word might be familiar to y'all. Okay, it's got ties to our states, but the Bessemer process was a new way to create a stronger and cheaper steel. So steel, it is not a new invention. We had steel around, okay, or iron or whatever it was. But the methods were not very good, okay? They did not make a pure steel. It had a lot of chemical properties, which made it weak, okay? It was expensive to make, so therefore the steel that's provided costs a lot. And you're really limited in what you can make as a result of it. Bessemer process, and we're not going to go into the details how they made it, but it cleaned up some of those chemical imperfections because it was easier to do, that it cost as much, so the product that it made, Bessemer steel, was a lot cheaper, okay? Now, if you've had some time to think about it, Bessemer, Alabama, okay? If you don't know where Bessemer is, it is near Birmingham, okay? Birmingham, all right? Let's talk about something important there, the Iron Bowl, okay? We all know about the Iron Bowl, okay? Alabama, Auburn's rivalry. The reason it's called the Iron Bowl is because the game used to be played in Birmingham every single year. Home or away, it didn't matter. It was always played in Birmingham. Birmingham is an iron city, okay? It grew as a result of the mass iron and ore deposits beneath or nearby the town. So you have factories and mines popped up all around it to harvest the iron and the ore, and then using the Bessemer process, turn it into steel to be sold, and that's how people got jobs. Well, you moved to that area because you need a job, so you're going to go work harvesting, mining iron. You need a place to live. So cities would pop up around those areas, all right? Company towns is what they would call them. Asheville, North Carolina is a great example. Prattville, Alabama with the cotton factory over there. But now you get towns growing. So Bessemer is one of those nearby towns that we can thank the Bessemer process and steel for why that town exists. Well, now that you got cheaper steel, you can lay a lot more track of railroads, so the trains can travel further into new parts of the country. But also allowed for larger buildings, okay, and primarily skyscrapers. Before steel, you used wood and brick to build all the buildings. A lot of them still do it to build houses now. But let's say your city is crowded because there's too many people moving there for the space you have. So you got to build up. You can't build out, you got to build up. Well, wood and brick can only support so much weight. All right. So to offset that, or not to offset that, but to solve that problem, Bessemer steel could go up a lot higher than wood and brick could, and it's a lot cheaper, stronger, sturdier, and that's where we start to get the skyscrapers. Okay, first one being the Flatiron Building in New York. All right, but continues on through there. Okay, also with the second wave, the development of corporations. Okay, we kind of introduced the groundwork for that with a joint stock company. But more money is being made. These companies are getting larger and larger, and they needed another way to operate. So they evolved into corporations, which needed a different form of management. And you get more foundations and more spread of the stock market as we know it. Now corporations are everywhere. You got multinational corporations, things like that. But corporations, Walmart, McDonald's, things like that we always see go buy our stuff from. That's where that starts to develop. Okay, so. There's questions there. If you want to ask and answer them in the follow-up video, I might go over the answers, but we're going to move on now. Okay, we need to start talking about some of the good and some of the bad in regards to the Industrial Revolution. So, the benefits, okay, it does help us out in a lot of different ways. Increased agricultural output, okay, we can date things like the McCormick Reaper and the John Deere plow, made in factories, all right, made because of Bessemer steel. Allowed farmers to farm a lot more food, a lot more crop, all right, in a shorter amount of time with less help. So we get more food, okay? More food means more people are fed. All right, population numbers start to increase, okay? Increase in industrial output. I know I stumbled over that. But this increase in industrial output leads to more jobs, more money flowing, All right, more things being made, okay, which means more things available to people. It all plays off itself. Also, increase in global trade. Okay, now you get more trade all across the globe. To help speed that up, okay, as part of the Industrial Revolution, we get the development of the Suez Canal, which went through Egypt to connect Europe to Asia a whole lot quicker than having to go around Africa like da Gama and Diaz first discovered. All right, and then the Panama Canal, which went through between North and South America through the nation of Panama to connect the Atlantic to the Pacific. Okay, in the U.S. too, you'll learn a cool story about that regarding Theodore Roosevelt. All right, pretty cool topic there. But there's just people's lives got better. Okay, the standard of living went up. Okay, you've got more food. All right, because now that you're working in a factory, you don't have to spend dusk till dawn working, so you've got more free time at home. Things have gotten cheaper because they're produced a lot faster and in larger quantity. So you have more things at home that you can use for leisure time. Okay, so this improved standard of living, just everyone's lives, and not everyone, but most people's lives started to get better in some aspect. Okay, there's new technology, cheaper stuff, and better jobs and pay. Okay, so instead of having to work to provide your own, you had a job. Okay, that paid you an hourly wage. Okay, so you knew you were every week you expect to get that set amount of money. So then that told you I can afford to buy this much for my family. I can afford to live in this kind of place. It gave people some stability that we all now rely on and crave. Okay, and then because of all these benefits, especially the agricultural ones, the world population is going to skyrocket, especially in Europe. Okay, people are living more comfortable. They're being fed more, so more people are going to live longer. All right, even the medical side. Okay. Infant mortality rates start to go down. Okay, that's why people didn't just live on average to the 30s. They lived 50s, all right, 60s, a lot of them, but the numbers are always so low because of infant mortality rate. Okay, sadly, a lot of children didn't live through adulthood or struggled in birth. So, because of the Industrial Revolution, with people living longer and infant mortality getting higher, the world population is going to skyrocket. Okay, so if you're looking at that chart, it is a slow growth. Okay, around the entire world of the population. But then about the time that the Industrial Revolution begins, you start to see an uptick. And then after World War II, it's going to make an even bigger skyrocket, all right, showing the trend we've been on. Okay, there are by far more people now, okay, than there were 100 years ago. I don't mean total, whatever. I'm just, all right, we're at about 7 billion people around the world. That number did not even be 100, 200 years ago, was a fraction of that. Okay, it wasn't the slow growth it has been fast and sudden. Okay, so those are some of the benefits of the Industrial Revolution. The positives, good. Now let's talk about the bad, the negatives, because there are some bads that come with it. Okay, biggest one is it's going to create both social and environmental issues. Okay, I mean, you're using all this coal to power the steam. Okay, well that stuff burns and smoke goes in the air. Okay, pollution. Okay. Factories discarding of waste that nature's not intended to break down. Okay, so you get a lot of environmental issues. Okay, pollution in cities, and local communities. Cities get crowded and more dirty, filth in the street. I mean, literally, people in apartments in the cities would dump their waste if they didn't have indoor plumbing out there on the street, and you're walking around it. Okay, kind of like those guys that fell in that building in Prague, if you remember back with the Reformation. So there's a lot of environmental, but also social, okay? Yeah, people are moving to cities. They're getting jobs at a steady wage. A lot of them, especially if you're an immigrant or a minority, are very, very low pay, not enough to support. So you got to live in miserable conditions, all right? Now, there is an attempt to fix and reverse this again in the United States. It's the progressive era. And it's not just the United States. It spreads outward. But from the late 1890s through about the 1820s, even towards the Great Depression, 1829, you get the progressive era, okay? And the greatest president of all time, Theodore Roosevelt, plays a big role in that, okay? So the conditions are also going to be very, very poor, okay? It's not well ventilated. You're breathing in this dust that you're working on, or even these chemicals. If we had more time, I would gross you out with the stories of The Jungle by Upton Sinclair and the horrible food packing industry, okay? It's worth looking up, though. It's really gross. It's going to sicken you out. But you're working long hours, you're exhausted, the safety conditions are not what they should be. People are dying in factories on the job. So the working conditions are just terrible. And even when it comes down to child labor, children having to work, okay, because they could fit in places that adults couldn't, but they're children. They have no clue what they're doing. All right, so it's dangerous for them as well. Okay, so child labor becomes a big problem. They're paid even less, so it wasn't even really worth it. But you had to have every little bit you could. We mentioned with the overcrowding of cities, okay, more and more people moving in. Well, there's not enough room for everybody, even with the skyscraper. So you would you get things like tenement houses where you'd have about 8 to 15 or whatever people sharing the same apartment room that have no clue who they are. All right, all strangers, but this is the only thing I can afford to come to the city to get a job, and this is what I'm going to do. Okay, and then along with that, more filth, the more people that are around. All right, think about what we're talking about this virus spreading. So social distancing is the big thing. Okay, well if you're in tight quarters, you can't really socially distance yourself. Okay, things are a lot more unsanitary. Okay, and then one of the last big negatives, and this is something we still deal with today, something called automation. Okay. Automation is when technology and machine of some sort replaces human labor. Okay, so factories now, we talked about when making those bottles. Maybe they got a machine that can stick the label on the bottle real quick, or most importantly, something that can fill it up the exact precise amount that it needs to be, so you maximize your profits. Well, those machines over time are cheaper than the salary of a worker, and so you have less need of the workers. Okay, if you're looking at the notes, you see the example of the self-serve at McDonald's. Okay, instead of having 3 or 4 people up there at the cash register, you go to the little kiosk, just like we do at Redbox or some other places. All right, gas stations, we don't use gas attendants anymore because we can now just put our card in there. All right, as soon as we're done pay or before we pay, it automatically checks it out. But you go in there, put in your information, you swipe your card. You don't have to talk to a single other person other than when they say food's ready and you grab it and say thank you, walk on. Okay, it's convenient for us. It's easy. All right, and it saves the company a lot more money, which means they could either make more profit or lower the prices. But it comes with the extent of other people's jobs. Okay, one industry that I think in the next few decades is going to face this big issue of automation is the trucker industry. Okay, because you start to get the self-driving cars, and that industry has started looking into having 18-wheelers that can drive themselves. It's dangerous, it's risky, not ready now, but eventually it is going to try to work towards that way because of profit saving. Okay, so automation, there's a lot of good that comes from the Industrial Revolution, and consumer benefits from automation, but the worker doesn't. Okay, and if the worker doesn't have money, then he's not going to have money to spend to go buy stuff. Okay, so that's why when we talk about trying to find a career, trying to find something that you can't just be replaced by with a machine, if it's not possible. Learn a skilled trade, go and do something. I should be a teacher. I love it, even though with a weird circumstance. Okay, try to find something that you can really make your mark on with your career, so you have some kind of stability. All right, so those are the problems. Okay, well, these problems eventually lead to some people to push for change. All right, and even within their own rights. Okay, and there's 2 areas where this demand for rights starts to develop. First one is with women's suffrage. Okay, I'm not talking about women who are suffering. That's a terrible thing. The word suffrage means the right to vote. All right. So suffrage is actually a very good thing. Okay. Well, during this time, you start to get women demanding the right to vote. Throughout history in most societies, they had been kept from voting. Okay. We talked about with the National Convention in France, all men had the right to vote. Ladies did not. Okay. And then what little rights they did gain, Napoleon pulled them back. Well, that was just France, okay? But France is not the exception. France was the norm in regards to that, okay? So women had always, through history, had very, very limited rights in their societies, okay? So eventually they get fed up with it during the Industrial Revolution. There's numerous factors at play that we're not going to be able to go in depth in, but they start to demand their rights, okay? So this movement for more rights for women in the late 1800s, we know it as feminism, all right? Now, there's a couple of different ways of feminism, including some people say modern wave nowadays, but we're just going to talk about the one for the right to vote. Okay, that was the big thing, the right to vote. Okay, so women are these feminists who would push for, campaign, lobby congressmen, whatever, to try to get the right to vote. They would be called suffragettes. Okay, if you're a fan of Mary Poppins, the mother in the movie, all right, it's a great film. If you haven't watched it right now, you got a ton of time. You all got Disney Plus, so why not? But the mother in the movie, okay, her big song is Sister Suffragette. Okay, she sings it. Talking about her job. She doesn't have a job at a factory, and they need a nanny because she's not at home because she's out campaigning for the woman's right to vote. trying to convince people to support that movement or that push. All right, so that is what a suffragette is, a woman who pushes for the right to vote. All right, and these are usually feminists, or feminism is the movement to try to gain more rights. Suffrage, the right to vote. Do not forget that. The next one, some of us are probably a little more familiar with, or at least our families, are trade unions. All right, so we mentioned the horrible working conditions. Basically, the workers got fed up with that, and they started to band together. Okay, the company can't necessarily fire all of us. Okay, is the thought behind that. So they developed what is called a trade union. All right, now you had other kind of unions, but a trade union focuses on a specific trade. Okay, maybe it's all chair makers, maybe it's all car manufacturers, okay, whatever. The different trades would have their own unions that would go to the employers on their behalf and say, this is what my workers need. You're not paying them enough. They're all going to quit or go, or the big thing they use, they'd go on strike where they would refuse to work for a set period of time to try to put strain on the company, okay? So these strikes would be used to stop work and pressure the boss. So the unions would use that as one means, or they negotiate collective bargaining. You might have heard about recently with the NFL and their players union, okay, to try to get rights for the workers. Now, some people, especially workers, praise the unions. Others feel like there are some flaws with it, all right? All in all, though, it was successful in gaining rights for the workers, okay? We still have tons of unions today. All right, with the first one, those of you looking through the notes, had been the American Federation of Labor. Now, this is a little out of order. I'm actually going to jump back on the suffrage movement, okay, to one story I left out to show you how important this right to vote was to women. You've got one of the most famous of all the suffragettes. Her name was Emily Davidson, okay? Now, she's British, and even in England, women didn't have the same rights as men. So to bring attention to the suffragette cause, Mrs. Davidson here, all right, goes to a horse race. All right, she's standing in the crowd, and as the horse comes around her corner, she jumps out on the track and gets run over by a horse. Now, she does this on purpose, and she knows that by getting struck by the horse, she is going to be killed, and that's exactly what happens. Okay, she gets trampled over by the horse, and she dies. Okay, this is intentional. She knew exactly what she was doing. But then people start talking about, why did this woman jump out from the horse, only to find out she had her suffragette sash on, and people who knew her said she was a suffragette. She was fighting for this right to vote for women, and whether they agreed or disagreed, it got people talking about this. I do not encourage that. Please don't ever jump out in front of any moving vehicle or even a horse, but it just goes to show you how important, okay, this right to vote was to some of these people that even feel like Emily Davidson, who were willing to die for that cause. All right? So, those are the two areas in regards to rights we're going to talk about. Now, the last thing, okay, I know we're coming up over half an hour. We're getting close to done, though. Economic changes, okay? We talked about the factory and pay and more money, more resources, all right? The colonies being forced to provide resources. So the economics change. Now, we had talked way back when about economic theory, and the big one we talked about was mercantilism. All right, talking about the pie theory and all that. Your country's, there's only so much money in the world. Your country's got to get a bigger slice if it wants to survive. Well, eventually that economic theory is going to be replaced by the one that we still predominantly rely on today, capitalism. All right, so capitalism is where you have private ownership of the means of production. All right, private is us, individuals. All right, you hear the word my private property. All right, your private belongings, things that you own, individual people, okay? So a company that is owned completely by people or a person, not by the government, okay? If it's by the government, that means public, like a public school that we all go to is funded by the government. Public parks, all right, public works, things that the government provides. So private, personally owned by people, citizens, public, owned by the government, okay? So the ownership of the means of production, the workers, the money, the resources, all that is owned privately by these people or by their companies. All right. And one thing that makes capitalism function is a concept known as the division of labor, where each person has different roles and they will all form together to create a whole. All right. Someone might have to work on laying down the foundation. Someone else might put up the framing. Someone might put the walls there. Okay. Each person has a different job, a different role to play, and not just within the same industry, but in the economic society as a whole. All right? And the big thing is limited government intervention. Now, in today's capitalist world here in the U.S., we have some government intervention. Okay, you're seeing it at play now, telling certain companies to shut down or trying to encourage them to make certain products. Okay, so we have some government intervention, but it's meant to be limited, all right, not where the government has complete control of an industry. And that brings us to our next two topics, okay, where the government does have a lot of control. The next one is socialism. Now, you hear this word a lot. Bernie Sanders currently is the second place for the Democratic nomination. Probably won't get it. It's going to be real ironic if you go back and watch this video and he does win it. But he is a socialist candidate. Okay, so socialism is where the means of production are partially owned by the government or by a community. All right, and it starts out, the whole concept starts out by some of these trade unions. That's what some people don't like them. Okay, where the people came together and this organization got them their rights and their better pay and better hours, better conditions. So it evolves into the idea of what if a government was more like that. And a socialist government, it's not complete control. Okay, there's still a very big gap between capitalism and socialism. All right, but the government might own certain industries. Okay, maybe they own the transportation of the entire nation. There's no private companies. Okay, no Greyhound, nothing like that. The government completely owns. Okay, you've heard it brought up with health care for people, Medicare for all, or the Affordable Care Act from a couple of years ago. Okay, the government having partial or complete control of certain industries. So that is socialism. Should have had a comment I just wanted to make on that. Currently they're talking about the possibility of sending out checks to fund some of these families who have hit hard times. Okay, whether you like it or not, okay, that is technically a form of socialism, the government funding people. Okay, but it's not something they're trying to do permanently. It's just literally in a time of a crisis. Now, the next one, and I'm just going to be honest, I cannot entertain the idea of this one being correct. It's flat wrong. Communism. Communism sucks. It's terrible. Okay, communism is where the government has complete control, complete ownership of all means of production. Okay, there are no private companies. You cannot go start a business. You work for the government. They tell you which jobs you work, how much you can get paid. They tell you what you can buy for the store and for how much. All right. Now, the father of communism, okay, is a man known as Karl Marx. All right. So Karl Marx is an economist. He's also a political theorist. And in his Communist Manifesto, he has this belief of a class struggle, okay, and eventually lead to a revolution. And different things like the thesis and antithesis, which a lot more high-level conversation than what we want to spend the time on. Karl Marx, founder of communism. Okay, now there are a few communist nations in the world like China, who they're communist politically, economically. They're a little different. Vietnam, North Korea, Cuba, and Laos. And outside of Cuba, all those are pretty much located out in Asia or Southeast Asia. Okay, that ties into the Cold War with the Soviet Union. That's a post-World War II discussion. Hopefully, we're back in school by then. So, long video. I don't expect you to watch it all at one time, but this is the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so please leave your comments, okay, or email in regards to your questions about the content. All right, now this is usually the time of the video where people say like and subscribe. Please don't do that. That's stupid. Okay, just watch the video when you want to learn the material. Okay, it's going to be on the website. Don't do that like and subscribe stuff unless you just want to. But importantly, though, watch the video. Try to answer the questions. Ask me any questions you may have. Okay, I hope you guys are doing great during this time. The difference sucks, but enjoy it. Spend some time with families. Have some mental health time. Get caught up. Hopefully in a couple of days we have our next video about, like I said, I believe it is nationalism. So y'all take care. And Austin Smith, have a wonderful day.